In a world trembling at the edge of silence, where whispers travel faster than bullets and diplomacy is buried beneath satellite signals, the sky just spoke. And what it revealed is terrifying. U.S. surveillance satellites have picked up what military officials are calling a significant Russian buildup along undisclosed zones. Movement not just of troops, but of intention, of power, and possibly war. And now Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, a man known for his composure in chaos, has uttered just 6 chilling words. We may be next in line, but this is more than geopolitics. This is about alertness, leadership, and the price of being unprepared. This moment is a mirror, not just for nations, but for all of us. Surveillance satellites don't have opinions. They don't sleep. They don't panic. They observe with absolute clarity, and in a world where narratives are twisted and truths are often delayed, they become the one source that cannot be manipulated. And what these U.S. satellites have just detected is not a theory. It's not a drill. It's not a political game. It's movement. Real, precise, deliberate movement. Convoys rolling in cold terrain. Infrastructure shifting under cover of darkness. Military formations that speak louder than any public statement. This is not just military exercise. It's not routine. It's preparation. And what's more dangerous than the buildup itself is the timing. Because moments like these often arrive when the world is distracted, when media is busy chasing scandals, when citizens are focused on their screens, and when leaders are bogged down in internal politics. But satellites don't get distracted. They orbit with purpose, and this time what they saw cannot be ignored. This isn't fear-mongering. It's not designed to create chaos. It's a call to awareness, to consciousness, to readiness. Because what you don't see can still hurt you. What you pretend isn't happening doesn't pause just because you're uncomfortable. And what satellites have picked up is the kind of movement that usually precedes consequences. Not just for one nation, but for many. It's easy to forget, especially in comfortable cities and behind secure walls, that conflict often starts silently. It doesn't always begin with a siren. It begins with the slow strategic shifting of pieces on a global chessboard. And by the time the average person realizes the danger, the first pawn has already been taken. That's why what satellites see matters. This is the lesson. Awareness is a form of power. It's not just the job of generals and presidents. It belongs to every citizen, every student, every worker, every soul who believes that freedom must be defended, not just in war, but in thought. When you know something is coming, you're no longer a victim. You're a participant. You get to decide how to respond, and that decision can shape history. So now the question isn't what Russia is doing. It's whether the rest of the world is willing to acknowledge it and act. Because denial is comfortable, but it's also dangerous. It creates gaps in defense, in leadership, in spirit. But clarity, even when it's uncomfortable, gives birth to strategy, to response, to courage. What the sky has shown us today should shake every complacent mind, not into fear, but into focus. Because the skies are never silent. They speak. We just have to be willing to listen. We may be next. 6 words, quietly spoken, yet thunderously loud. When Netanyahu had delivered this warning, it wasn't just an assessment of military risk. It was a pulse check on the state of the world, a wake-up call, disguised as a whisper. Those words weren't crafted for headlines. They weren't meant to create panic. They were spoken as a leader's instinct, the kind of instinct forged through decades of navigating fire, war, diplomacy, and betrayal. Because when a man like Netanyahu sounds the alarm, it's not out of fear, it's out of foresight. In leadership, the most difficult thing isn't reacting to chaos. It's recognizing it before it strikes. Netanyahu isn't reacting to an invasion. He's reacting to the invisible tremors that precede one, to the rising hum of preparation, to the silence between movements, to the subtle, dangerous quiet that always comes before the storm. He's not warning the world as a victim. He's doing it as a strategist, one who knows that in geopolitics, delay is death, and hesitation is a luxury no frontline country can afford. Too often, the world waits for confirmation in the form of bloodshed. We don't listen to the clues. We ignore the shifts. We downplay the words of those who stand closest to the fire. But this moment is not about missiles or maps. It's about mindset. Because when someone like Netanyahu says we may be next, he's not just talking about Israel. He's talking about every nation that believes it's safe just because it's quiet. Every leader who thinks distance equals immunity. Every citizen who thinks conflict won't touch them simply because it hasn't yet. This warning is a mirror, not just to military alliances, but to human behavior. We often wait until it's too late, until cities fall, until economies crash, until lives are lost. But the most powerful thing a leader can do is raise the alarm before the enemy crosses the line. And that's exactly what this moment demands. Urgency without panic, clarity without chaos, and preparation without delay. Netanyahu's words are not a prophecy, they are a prompt to reassess, to re-engage, and to recognize that security is not permanent. It is earned every day through vigilance, unity, and truth. And truth, right now, is this: the world is shifting, threats are real, and no one is immune. We live in a time where silence can be fatal, where underestimating ambition can lead to disaster, and where the strongest leaders are not the ones who speak the loudest, but the ones who speak when it's hardest, when no one wants to hear it. So hear this now. We may be next is not a cry for help. It's a challenge to the world to see, to believe, and to act before it becomes we were next. Washington meets, NATO debates, diplomats shake hands and pose for photos. Statements are carefully worded, tweets are drafted, and press conferences are held. But behind all the noise, behind the carefully staged narratives and rehearsed assurances, one undeniable fact remains: Putin is moving quietly, deliberately, without needing anyone's permission. And this is where the world's greatest danger lies, in thinking that watching equals acting, and that reacting equals leading. Right now, the world is watching history unfold, but only a few are truly responding. The rest, they're analyzing, hesitating, calculating their political cost. But Putin doesn't operate on Western timetables. He doesn't wait for the next summit. His strategy is cold, fast, and rooted in psychological dominance. And while the world debates terminology, is it a buildup or just drills, Putin is 10 steps ahead, weaponizing confusion, exploiting weakness, and testing just how far he can go before someone draws a real line. The truth is, power doesn't lie in having resources. It lies in using them. And that's exactly what's happening. While NATO officials issue stern warnings and journalists ask tough questions, satellite images show a different story. Machinery in motion, alliances in silence, and ambition that isn't waiting for permission. This is the nature of modern warfare. It doesn't always start with a bang. It begins with subtle moves, blurred borders, and a world too distracted to care until it's too late. This is not about criticizing global leaders. It's about recognizing a pattern, one history has shown us too many times. Before every major conflict, there is always a moment when the world hesitates, a moment when it sees the signs but fails to act, a moment when it chooses comfort over confrontation. And every time, that moment becomes the regret that echoes for generations. So, the real question is this: are we going to be passive observers, or will we reclaim the role of guardians, not just of our borders, but of our values? Because silence is not peace. Silence is the space where danger grows. And when we pretend that watching is enough, we hand over control to those who are willing to act, no matter the consequences. This is about courage. The courage to speak when others are quiet. The courage to act when others are calculating. The courage to say, not again, not this time. Because nothing changes unless someone is brave enough to interrupt the cycle. This is the moment to remember that history doesn't wait for applause. It moves with or without you. And if we don't lead, someone else will. someone who doesn't share our values, our vision, or our restraint. The choice is not whether history will be written, it's whether we'll have the courage to hold the pen. Lines are always drawn before wars begin. Lines on maps, lines in speeches, lines in treaties. But those lines, no matter how bold or red, are only as strong as the people willing to defend them. And when those lines are crossed, the world changes. Quietly at first. Then suddenly, that's the moment we are standing on now. The moment just before the breach. What US satellites have seen isn't just military movement. It's intention. It's positioning. It's the soundless drumbeat of a nation that knows exactly what it's doing. And when Netanyahu says, we may be next, he's not speaking out of speculation. He's reading the pattern. A pattern history has etched over and over. Movements precede messaging, and power precedes peace. Because peace without strength is an illusion, a pause, not a promise. This is what happens when lines are crossed. The conversation changes. The rules bend. The very definition of normal shifts. Yesterday's warnings become today's realities. And suddenly, the things we thought could never happen are happening in real time. Cities burn, markets collapse, families flee, leaders scramble. And everyone looks back at the moment it all began. That single moment when a boundary was ignored and the world let it happen. But here's the truth few are willing to admit. The enemy doesn't always start the war. Sometimes it's our silence that does. Our failure to speak, our refusal to act, our fear of being too early or too alarmist. Because we think restraint is wisdom, and sometimes it is, but other times restraint becomes regret. And by then, it's too late to redraw the line. Netanyahu understands this. He's lived it. His nation has faced enemies at its doorstep more times than most. His warning isn't just about Israel. It's about what the world refuses to see. That when Putin moves, he doesn't just challenge a border, he challenges the entire balance of power. And if he senses weakness, not in weapons, but in will, he will press further. So what happens when lines are crossed? Everything changes. The international order fractures. Trust disappears. Alliances are tested. And the people, the innocent people who had nothing to do with any of it, they pay the price with their safety, with their futures, with their lives. This is why we must not wait. Not until missiles fly. Not until news anchors call it breaking. Not until the damage is irreversible. We must learn to act at the sign of the first shift, not the first strike, because the line is already moving. And soon, the only question left will be, did we defend it, or did we watch it vanish? This is not just a geopolitical headline. It's a mirror reflecting who we are and who we choose to be in moments that demand more than opinions. Because when a leader like Netanyahu says, we may be next, he's not just speaking as a prime minister. He's speaking as a man who has seen what happens when people stay quiet, when nations delay, and when fear wins over action. But this isn't just about Israel. It's about you. Because in every generation, there comes a time when the world feels uncertain, when the threats feel too big, the silence feels too heavy, and the leaders we look to seem unsure. This is that time, and this is your moment to decide, will you be a spectator or a shield? You don't have to hold office to protect what matters. You don't need a title to take a stand. Being the shield means standing for truth when others fold under pressure. It means raising your voice, even if it shakes. It means seeing through distraction and recognizing danger for what it is, not when it hits your doorstep, but when it appears on the horizon. We live in a world where most people scroll, not speak, where the news feels like a show, not a warning. But the reality is, power is not held by the few anymore. It's held by the aware, by those who choose to stay awake, while others drift into apathy, by those who ask questions, seek truth, and demand clarity, not comfort. Netanyahu's warning should not scare you. It should ignite you, because awareness is not fear, it's preparation. And preparation is the first form of defense. You may not be able to stop a satellite image from showing troop movement, but you can stop yourself from ignoring what it means. You may not be able to halt a world leader's ambition, but you can shape the narrative in your own world, your home, your community, your country. Because when you choose to live with courage, you give others permission to do the same. It's easy to wait for someone else to act. It's easy to believe that strength belongs to governments or armies. But real strength begins with people who believe that truth matters, that freedom is worth guarding, that silence is not always noble. Sometimes it's betrayal. So be the nation, be the voice, be the shield. Not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. The world doesn't need more watchers. It needs people who understand that protection begins with awareness, courage, and unshakable purpose. In a world bracing for whatever comes next, the most powerful force isn't in missiles or tanks. It's in people who refuse to be numb. This is not just about Russia or Netanyahu or satellites. This is about you and what you choose to stand for when everything starts to fall apart. Because someday your children will ask what you did when the buildup began. Will you say you watched? Or will you say you woke up the world?